Hello to all you focused learners out there and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into a really fascinating deep dive. We're going to uncover the hidden architecture of workplace dysfunction. You know, if you've ever felt like your workplace is actively making it harder for you to do your actual job, well, you are absolutely not alone. We're going to explore this groundbreaking framework that proves organizational problems are rarely just about having problem employees. Actually, it's almost always about the environment those employees are forced to operate in.
Okay, let's dive into this by asking a pretty universal management question. Why do so many management initiatives just completely fail to fix broken organizations? Think about it for a second. When something goes wrong at work, our default reaction is almost always to point the finger at individual employees, right? We say, oh, they lack motivation, or they need more training, or my personal favorite, they just aren't a culture fit. So management rolls out some shiny new training program, or they tweak the bonus structure, or they completely shuffle the org chart around. And yet, 6 months later, the exact same dysfunctions are still there. Why? Because we're basically just treating the symptoms without ever actually diagnosing the disease.
Here's where we really see the contrast. Traditional management tries to fix individual flaws and behaviors. It's essentially playing an endless game of whack-a-mole with employee problems. The source material for this explainer uses a pretty staggering analogy for this. It says that trying to alter just a few behaviors to fix an entire organization is like trying to use a few band-aids to treat all the casualties of a world war. I mean, it just doesn't work. Behavioral systems analysis, on the other hand, shifts the focus entirely. It looks at fixing the interconnected environment and the overall system that's actually producing that behavior in the first place.
Section 1. The limits of behavior and why band-aids don't work.
To truly grasp this, we first need to understand the fundamental limitation of looking at behavior in a vacuum. The source text points out something really fascinating. Behavior analysis is incredibly powerful at knowing how to change behavior, right? We know how to use incentives, feedback, and reinforcement to get people to do things. But in a complex organization, it doesn't actually tell us what behavior to change. For example, think about a teacher who gives out endless busy work just to keep 32 students quiet. The behavior, giving assignments, is reinforced because, hey, the classroom is quiet. But does that behavior actually add value to the students' learning? Probably not. Identifying what behavior actually adds value requires a much wider systemic view.
And that wider view? Well, that is exactly what behavioral systems analysis, or BSA, provides. It's a framework that brilliantly combines behavior analysis with general systems theory. The whole goal here is to improve performance by managing the environmental variables that support functional behavior. So, in plain English, if you want better performance, you don't just yell at the worker to do better, you completely redesign the environment so that doing the right thing is actually the most natural and rewarding path for them to take.
Section 2. The Total Performance System, viewing organizations as living systems.
This brings us to a totally new way of looking at organizations. We need to treat them not as these static, boring org charts, but as living, adapting systems. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this generic blueprint provides a universal flow for literally any enterprise. Just notice the flow here. Over on the left, we've got our inputs, things like capital, technology, materials, and labor. These feed directly into the organization's internal processes. So the organization acts just like a living organism. It consumes these resources, digests them through work, and produces outputs, products or services that are then pushed out into the marketplace on the right. And crucially, there are constant feedback loops telling the organization if it's surviving or if it's starving.
So, let's ground this abstract theory in some reality. Here we see this exact same system mapped perfectly to a small for-profit business, Terry and Mark's accounting firm. They take in their own capital, their specific accounting know-how, office materials, and their own labor. Their internal process is simply doing the accounting work. And their outputs? Those go into two very specific marketplaces, the financial marketplace and the consumer marketplace. The thing is, if Terry and Mark don't manage this entire flow as one interconnected system, their business will fail, no matter how amazing they are at actually doing taxes.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer power of the model. We've taken that identical framework and mapped it onto a massive not-for-profit institution, Western Michigan University. Sure, the labels have changed slightly. Instead of client fees, we're looking at tax and tuition revenue. Instead of accounting services, it's educational know-how. But the system itself, it is exactly the same. This proves that the total performance system is a universal law of organizations. Whether you're a tiny two-person firm or a massive university, you are subject to the exact same systemic rules of survival.
Section 3. The 4 classic inputs that fuel the system.
Let's zoom in on the inputs that are actually feeding that flow.
Every single organization, regardless of its size or its industry, absolutely must consume resources to survive. And every enterprise requires 4 specific things: money, technology, materials, and labor. For Terry and Mark, the money might just be a small business loan. The technology is their accounting software. Materials are basic office supplies, and labor is maybe a handful of clerks. But for Western Michigan University, the money is state funding and tuition. The technology is massive research labs. The materials are tons of paper and building energy. And the labor is thousands of faculty and staff. The specific inputs look very different, obviously. But those 4 fundamental categories remain exactly the same. And here's the kicker. If an organization mismanages even one of these 4 inputs, the entire system chokes.
Section 4. 2 marketplaces of value, where organizations must succeed.
Okay, we've looked at what goes into the system. Now let's shift our focus to the outputs. For an organization to survive, it has to successfully deliver value to 2 very distinct external arenas. Those 2 arenas are the financial marketplace and the consumer marketplace. The financial marketplace consists of investors, taxpayers, lenders, basically the people who supply the capital and expect a return on it. The consumer marketplace, on the other hand, consists of clients, students, or patients, the people actually out there using your service. The source material emphasizes a massive pitfall here. Putting too much emphasis on just the financial side or just the consumer side is a guaranteed prescription for organizational failure. You literally cannot just serve one master.
And that brings us to a really brilliant analogy from the source text regarding how we should actually view money in an organization. The golden rule is that you must follow the money, but honestly not for the reason you might think. Money is to an organization what temperature is to a patient. When a physician's assistant takes your temperature, it's a vital indicator of your survival, right? But a patient is not just about their temperature. In the exact same way, while a business absolutely must monitor its money to survive, a business is not just about money. It has to balance that financial health with providing actual, tangible consumer value.
Section 5. Rules for Systemic Management. Consider this your diagnostic audit.
So, how do we actually apply all of this? Well, we're going to wrap up with a highly actionable diagnostic audit based on the source text's guidelines. You can literally take this back to your own workplace on Monday morning. So the crucial point is summarized right here in these top 4 rules for systemic management. Number 1, follow the money, tracking the economic value added. Number 2, add value to all stakeholders. And yes, that absolutely 100% includes your employees. If you don't add value to the people doing the work, the system collapses. Number 3, get really good at helping people perform in the midst of constant change. And number 4, beware of current and past best practices. Why? Because as the text notes, every single organization and environment is uniquely different. Blindly imitating a so-called best practice from a completely different environment rarely works. And honestly, it can actually damage your specific system.
Which leads us to this profound realization from our source author, Dale Brethower. He writes, even though there are many thousands of job titles, every employee has the same major job responsibility: adding value. I love this because it brings the macro system view all the way back down to the core purpose of the individual worker. Your job isn't your title. Your job, your real job, is to add value to the system.
Which leaves us with this final vital question you need to ask yourself. Is your organization's system built to help you add value, or is it just getting in your way? If people in your workplace are failing, it might finally be time to stop blaming them and start taking a really hard look at the system they're forced to operate in. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this new systemic lens transforms the way you view your own workplace.